All right. So I'm going to, I think normally it blocks off anybody who's not on camera, so you can't even tell that Deja's here. Um, Let me see if I can have her, if there's a way I can have her name show up so that I don't know how to do it. So, I mean, she's here and we'll just say she's here. It'll be
Hello,
fine.
presence.
It should pop up. If I start talking, I'm assuming it would like pop
It
up.
won't, oh, it does.
Oh,
Okay. I see
okay.
it when I'm not in, it doesn't pop up for me, but I do see it. Okay. Well, we are good to go. Welcome, welcome, giving folks a chance to join us. We are now both live and recording. This is Guess What's in My Cup. So, welcome, welcome. Good morning.
Good
I am
morning.
Dr. Jessica Ross, excited to be here. And we have our co host with us today, and then we have a special guest. So, as you all know, I am a Michigan based sex therapist. I'm licensed in Louisiana, Maine, and Arizona. My primary focus is on Black women's sexual pleasure. Today, we're going to talk about all other things, right? But that is what I focus on. That is my bread and butter. That is what I love and very excited whenever I get the chance to share in that with you. I have my cup today. I'm sipping on a little apple cider in my uh, Keep the Tiny Humans Alive cup. You've seen this one before, but this is how I motivate myself every day. So excited to be here and sipping with you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Shelley. I'm a Michigan-based licensed psychologist. I primarily work with women who are navigating transformations or transitions, do the identity and embodiment work necessary to both align and sustain the life that they know that they're meant for. Today, in my cup, you've got a nice little cup out. It's water with lemon and ice, and so
She's,
spruced it up just a bit.
you know she's always gonna spruce it up. That's what she does.
And does.
Dage is not on camera today, but she's gonna introduce herself. She has a bit of a thing going on, but she'll tell you about it.
Hello everybody. It's Deja, aka Deja Therapist. I am a licensed professional counselor located in Michigan. My primary focus is young women and gender, women, and sexuality. Also focusing on anxiety, depression, adjustment, change, transition, all of those things. And yep, I'm licensed here in Michigan. Mhm.
So we have a special guest with us here, and hopefully he'll
Mhm.
continue to join us. We have Darnell, and so we'll have Darnell introduce himself and tell us what's in his cup.
So, my name is Darnell Jennings. Big pleasure to be here. Um, Not a licensed therapist, anything like that. So, I hope to bring a very unique perspective to the show today. MBA, I work in procurement. Am psychology PhD candidate, all but dissertation that currently working on. So, if you see these other screens around me, that's it's chapters spread out all throughout those. Married for 15 years, father of a 15-year-old as well. So I hope to bring that unique perspective. My research focus is music and memory. So not sure if it applies to this one. So keep that in mind when you guys have that conversation and bring me back for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm like, oh my God, let's dig in. But I'm gonna turn my whole nerd brain off so that we can focus on today's conversation. So much ish has been in my cup over the last couple of weeks since we've been able to come and meet with everybody. I could go down a rabbit hole with what that looks like. But I know last we all talked, Dave had brought up a topic that I thought was, and we all thought was good to bring to the general public. And we wanted to have the male perspective on this conversation as well. And so, Dave, you want to introduce it?
Yes. So pretty much the topic for today is consider zip it, keep it shut. And I got this topic. My idea was from a book that I've recently read called Zip It. It's called Zip It by Karen Eman, and it's a 40-day Zip It challenge. And pretty much the book is set up like you could read like a couple pages a day, and it also gives you like a scripture, so it is a like a Christian book. It gives you a scripture that is based on the topic for that day, and then they kind of break down the scripture, but it applies to everything like everything in your everyday life. It doesn't You don't have to be necessarily a religious or spiritual person to receive what the book is talking about. And then it's set up about like they have things in there. It says like lessons for the lips. So it's like different things you can implement during the day, like when to be wise to keep your mouth shut or when to refrain from like going back and forth. So it's a really good book. So I thought that that was something that we could pretty much discuss today because I know picking your battles is very important.
And how we sort of took that and ran with it was in relationships, we often hear men say women don't know how to keep their mouth closed. They talk too much. They disturb the peace of the home. And, you get a lot of women that say men don't talk enough and, you don't work through enough. And so curious to know um, what you all start off. Like we've had a chance to sit with this. I know we're just pulling you into it. And so what do we think? I mean, because I got my opinion. I know I talk a little too much sometimes. Probably did this morning. That was a whole thing. I ain't gonna go there. But what do we think?
Um, you guys brought me in on a hot topic, huh? Straight to the fire. Straight to the fire. So no, but seriously, this is a very big topic, right? And I think that we tend to over focus on it in certain areas of life, but we don't think about its application daily, right? And I know a lot of times we pull on that parallel between, when I'm trying to be a little more reserved here, but right, let's just go ahead and jump right into it because there's this big notion, I'm sure we've all heard it of, when to shut up when you're at work and your boss is talking to you. How come you can't shut up and talk to me like that when we're at home?
I think I
So
said that this morning.
Right. So I mean we're all familiar with this because we've all had jobs, kept jobs, and we've all learned to bite our tongue in certain situations, right? Um, Even a lot of us growing up in certain environments, we in church, we know when to be quiet, right? We know how not to talk to our mother and get our teeth knocked out or slapped across the room in some kind of ways, right? For those brought up in certain backgrounds. So it's no different with that same mentality. It's just as important in life. And then there also goes into the respect factor of listening and knowing the right time to pick those battles. So I think I heard that picked up also or said also. So yeah, very important, especially in the business world. And as men, we have to do it a lot too, right? So yeah, sometimes we're a little quiet there because we learn to be quiet and control that a little bit more when we need to learn to open up and express ourselves. But it's also not just what you do, it's how you do it too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's interesting because when I was thinking about, oh, my bad, Dave, were you about to say something?
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, you go. You went.
Okay. Oh no, I was just gonna say, definitely it's hard. That's why I'm reading a book, clearly. It is hard for me to be quiet at times. It's like a spectrum. Either I'm really quiet and I don't say anything, or it's coming out like word vomit and I can't stop it. So I think for me, and I know we don't have to like dig into this right now, but I think for me, the need to be heard is something that has been deeply rooted in me since I was a child. So when I don't feel understood or I don't feel like you can that you're hearing me, that it's something in me like I have to keep going until I can get like some type of cue that you understand what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
So and that's why I don't do well with people who withdraw from conversations or are like quiet and they don't have any indicators or anything that they're following because it's like almost like I can't, I don't know the word for it right now, but it's like I can't control. I have to keep going and going and going. So for me, it's something that's kind of like mental that I've noticed that is linked to my childhood on why I have to just keep going and going. Even if I repeated myself 10 times, I'm gonna keep saying it.
And
So
there's a whole theory around that, right? Like the withdrawer and the pursuer, and like what that means in relationships and, from an emotionally focused standpoint. But Shelly, what were you going to say?
Yeah, like Dave, I'm glad you brought that up because that's kind of where my mind was going with it as well. Like back to some of those early experiences that kind of shape how I even thought about the subject or the topic in the first place. And so I will say, just being true to who I am, certain wording and certain phrasing like rubs me the wrong way. Like I grew up a middle child, and so if there are any other family dynamics, middle child kind of thing, we value being seen and feeling heard. Like that's something that feels core to me. And so I find that's important in my relationships. I find that important in my friendships. I find that important in the spaces that I occupy. And so even this idea of saying like, ooh, you need to be quiet, like it rubs up against something that like my brain can be split into these different places, right? Because not all things are productive, not all things are helpful, not all things are the right timing, place, and all of those different things. And the part of me that is human, the part of me that has experienced the things I've experienced, feeling muted, being a Black woman, and what that feels like to feel like, ooh, whenever you do talk or you do vocalize or you do share whatever, it's looked at or perceived or equated into whatever it is that people take it to be. And so, like, I know I rub up against it. Interesting. And so I was really curious about just this conversation where we went with it, because I know that there's going to be so many people that also feel like, what you mean shut up, or what you mean be quiet? Like, I get to say what I get to say, but at what point can we kind of like see the nuance that exists in there a little bit more, in a way that feels like it pushes us closer to what we ultimately want? And like, if we're talking about relationships right now, it feels like, okay, connection, right? Is that what we're actually looking for? Is a sense of feeling seen and heard? Are there other ways to get that met than how we might initially think?
So what I'm pulling away so far, though, is this makes me think about Sue Johnson's work, but this idea of typically what's happening in any conversation is that everybody is just trying to be heard. And in doing so, though, we end up in this sort of cycle where if I'm the person who's the pursuer, I'm going to pursue you harder the more you withdraw. And I think men don't necessarily, I'm not going to say men, because I think men can sometimes be the pursuer too. And so I think what is not understood is when you're the person that pursues, you are attempting to get that need met. And like, you're like, hear me, hear me, hear me, validate me, hear me, hear me, hear me. And the other person's like, back off, right? And the problem is that it's a cycle. The more I pursue, the more you withdraw, the more you withdraw, the more I pursue. And so now we're stuck and it blows up into something when, from what I hear y'all saying, the beginning part was just like, hey, I have something to say and I'd like you to acknowledge what I have to say.
And as somebody who's done like a lot of work when I was doing couples with pursuers and withdrawers, because for whatever reason, those two love to find each other. They love to, and it works, right? And I think as somebody who is a non-withdrawer, I think what can happen sometimes is the perspective of the withdrawer gets missed. And I think what that work taught me is withdrawing doesn't mean like, oh, I'm not here for this, or you're too much to deal with. It's how they're processing what's coming in that moment, or even how they're processing what they believe will help the relationship moving forward. If I be quiet, if I stay silent, we can take that back to childhood too. When was it safer to withdraw? When was it safer to close your mouth? When did you get in more trouble for saying whatever? What does it feel like in your body? Do I feel overwhelmed, overstimulated? Can I even access some of those mental resources to be able to put together, or am I just kind of like receiving the onset right now? And then as the withdrawal, like, what does it feel like in my body when I have to hold and sit with it? Because that feels like, okay, well, it's not getting resolved. And if there is no resolution, how does that actually show up in your body? What discomforts, what, y'all know that feeling where it's like, oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, when you just want it to be over. I don't know. I hate to stick with this from the male-female perspective, but I think that's the most common version of this is like men want to be left alone and women want to solve the problem.
I guess that's where I chime in, right? Man, this is okay. So I don't know if it's that you said something really important I got to touch on, right? I got to go back to it, Dr. Shelley. When you shut down, when is it an okay place for me to come back out of that shell? Because you didn't want to talk to me yesterday when I tried to approach you about something I really wanted to unload and really wanted to discuss with you because it wasn't a good time for you or whatever it was. So now I'm in my protective space. I'm in my shell. I don't want to be shut down. I don't want to feel shut down. Yeah. So, like you say, you retrieve and you go back. So I think it's important, and that works more towards the communication skills, and that's where let's be honest, men and women are different. The way we process feelings, the conversations that I have with my wife is very different than the conversations I have with my friends, right?
Mhm.
Maybe a lot more words, maybe a lot longer of a conversation piece to feel that same validation, and maybe a lot more back and forth to where do you get this? Okay, now validate that you understand what I was trying to convey to you. Versus with my guys, I may say 5 words and it's just, oh, yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. Conversation over. Now we moved on to something different.
Uh-huh.
Uh, so, and then there does have to be the right temperature, right? Because when you're talking to someone that you're in a relationship with, or someone even, I'm very more respectful of a lady when I'm trying to have a conversation. So I want to make sure she completes her thoughts. I want to make sure versus the, hey, fellas, right? If you heard a conversation with guys in the next room, we're getting louder, we're speaking over each other. Again, it doesn't take as much. Um, so when is it a good time for me to be in a calm space to where I can let you talk, listen, process everything you're saying, provide that feedback so that you get that validation? It's not always the same time as when you want to unload it,
Mm.
right? Um,
Be for real, like I think all of us on this camera got kids. All of us have jobs. All of us
yeah.
are doing multiple things. And so, like, let's be for real. When is this time that everybody keep like that we keep referring to? Where first off, where y'all finding it? But like, where is the good time? Like, how do we decide in the situations we're in where we could actually have these real in-depth conversations? Like, cool, you
So,
come back out of your shell, but how do we get into that space?
right. I try to look for opportunities where I know typically between these times of days, it's the wind down period. We both
Mm.
got a chance to disconnect from whatever's got us going in a day. And sometimes it's a day later, sometimes it's two, sometimes it's 3 days later. Sometimes I plan to come back the next day and I need an extra day in between that because right now I'm not in a space to where I can have this conversation with you. And that's the same thing at work, right? We talk about shut up, and I know it seems like we're putting it more on a woman perspective, but even back from a man perspective, because I have to chew and shut up a lot. But I don't talk about that. So you guys probably don't see that, right? Men don't talk
Mm.
about the times where we have to not talk about our feelings or not express ourselves or just bite our tongue. Um, and that could be, a long period also. Sometimes we forget and we just push and we move past it.
Mm.
So when is that perfect time? I don't know if there is a perfect time, right? It depends on the relationship, the situation, and what it is that I need to convey. At least that's
Hmm.
my thought, right?
Yeah. I mean, ideally, I would say, kind of repeating what you just said, like finding the right time, being intentional with bringing the conversation back up. But that would be in a perfect world. I feel like it's hard. A lot of times that doesn't happen. It's just life happens. You get distracted with the kids. You get distracted with other things. Something else has came up. Now y'all have to focus on the kids get in trouble at school. Like, and sometimes you never revisit those conversations, but you still have those lingering feelings, or y'all haven't came to like a conclusion or something like that, or been able to express what you were holding in or was framing from. So I think part of that is you have to be intentional because those conversations have to happen.
So let me ask y'all this though. At what point, and I think Shelley was hitting on this, Dr. Shelley was hitting on this earlier. How do we know when do we lean into a conversation versus when do we just move on? Because to your point, Arna, like sometimes we do have to bite our tongue and we move on. And especially if you're at a place like work or something like that, you can't always go back and address the situation because it is what it is and it's done. And so, like, how do you know when it's like, yeah, let me broach this. This is something that was left open versus, no, this was a me problem or this is, not important and I need to leave it alone.
I feel like that's where the self work has to come in because there's a lot of competing things that are happening when you're experiencing whatever in whatever kind of relationship. So if we're thinking about like romantic relationships right now, like okay, there are some things you do that genuinely what but maybe it's not something that like after 24 hours I'm too pressed about. Like that's just what it is. Deja was saying something too, where like if I'm still feeling something about this, if there's something that needs to get off, and not because like, ooh, I just need to spew it off. And I think that's something that we also have to learn. Because sometimes there's going to be feelings that come up that don't necessarily or don't always need to be worked out with the other person. Some of it is our stuff. And like being able to discern what that is, that's so much like can I go back to myself? What's actually coming up for me in this moment? Is it because I didn't like how, like, just what came up, right? So you go down these questions that you're asking yourself to try and figure that out. But I think when you're then at that moment where you're like, yeah, nah, like this is, you express that. And Deja kind of started to hit on it a little bit where she was like, okay, there is no perfect time. But if you know that this is important to you and I make it clear, like, hey, this is important to me. This is something we need to figure out and work together to just have space. Like, I want to be able to talk to you about this. One thing I'll say to my husband a lot is like, hey, yeah, something was coming up for me. Like, and I know it's about to be a thing because I know how I'm coming at it with. Let me know when's a good time for you. And what he has had to learn to do with me, because he can't just say okay to that, because okay means it's not coming back up. And that's what has been the dynamic in our relationship. Okay means it's not coming back up. He can provide some sort of idea for me. And what that does as the pursuer is it allows me to know that this is also important, but it's not being handled right now. It's then leaving me to then be able to regulate myself in the moment to say, Shelly-Ann, you can now put your thoughts together, maybe even a little better, instead of it just being however it's coming out. Because I'm a quick processor and I'm an, what is it? I process out loud. He processes in his head. And so that can make conversations with us very different in the moment because I'm quick with it. And he's still trying to figure out, wait a minute, what is going on?
Don't try me up. I'm sorry, I don't have the patience. Like I asked Riley this morning, like, okay, well, what do you need? He's like, well, patience and loving and work. And I'm just like, yeah, but I said a thing, and I want this thing to like be done, and like let's move on, like let's get to it. And he's like, well, no, I gotta process, and you gotta say it a certain way, and it has to be experienced a certain way. And my brain is like, yeah, but like we said a thing, we did a thing, and like we're moving on from that thing. And he like, no, I'm still sitting in this thing.
Like you're trying to check it off, and he's like, well, hold on, I'm still there.
Yeah, we're very different, right? We talk about zipping it, but a lot of times we do have to think back to the men are always, as boys, taught to zip it emotionally, right? Don't be open emotionally. So first we have to first sit with ourselves and do I understand what's going on? Then how do I feel about it? And that's a real thing. We do have to ask ourselves, how do we feel about this? We have to not just fight the same way you guys have to fight sometimes to draw things in our conversations. We have to fight to draw things within our own emotions so that we know how to feel because we're so used to moving on autopilot to keep it going, keep the train going that we don't always get a chance to unpack emotionally what it is that we think, feel, and to connect with our feelings, right? We're taught to put our emotions and our ego to the side to reach the goal. So a lot of times we're just operating in that same space all the time, and not asking ourselves, how does that feel to us, right? What does this mean for us emotionally? So this is the reverse.
Good, yeah. It's this idea that I'm kind of curious, throwing it back to you, Jessica, is like, in those situations where it's like, come on, get here. But like what is required to get here is a longer route. Are we able to give that? And that's a harder, because I want it, but it's taking you a little longer to get there.
I mean, okay. So what both of you are saying, I think, okay, I get it. Men have been shut down from a lot of men have been shut down from childhood from an emotional perspective, especially Black men. Like, don't feel it, like survive it, and then move on to the next thing. And so I understand that. And I can understand how I can play like, and I'm thinking about this as out loud, like the situation happened this morning, but I'm thinking about it with you all. And so I can understand how me saying like, okay, how come we can't move on and how come we can't get to the next place is to Darnell's point saying, put your emotion away. Like, let's get on to this next thing. Your emotions are not valid in this particular space. I can see how that could be perceived that way of me being like dismissive of what, he was experiencing in that particular space. And I could also see like in my mind, like, it's not a big deal. It's not that big, and you blew it up. It's also sort of that dismissive space of like you can't have feelings in this space, right? So I get it. I still sit on that line though of like how do we know when it's appropriate to lean into that space? Because sometimes I don't know, like sometimes I'll be like let's move on, and other times I get it like let's lean into the emotion, let's feel all the feelings. And if I'm being like the best therapist brain, I'm saying like, yeah, I feel all the feelings all the time. We always have the space. We're always processing. If I'm being the human me and I'm taking that hat off, that's tough, right?
Yeah.
Like it's tough to always want to be in that space.
Yeah.
hmm I also just think like, so one of the weeks in the book, it was like week 6. It was literally the chapter was called "When to Be Silent and When to Speak Up." Um, and each day, day 26 through day 30, it was discussing. So for day 26, for example, it said, "When you think you know the why, it's time to be silent."
Your face, Jessica. There was a
So
reaction.
pretty much it kind of went into when you think like when you're thinking for somebody else, when you are trying to speak for them or tell them how they should feel about their feelings. So kind of what Jessica was just talking about with kind of like not purposely minimizing people's feelings, but feeling like you know better about how they should feel, how they should respond. That's when it's a time to be silent. Um, Also, I mean, explanatory. When you know better, every battle is not worth the fight. When you know better, it's time to be silent. When you know you don't need to go there. When you know why they are responding the way that they are. They had a long day at work today and you came in nagging and they didn't have the best response, right? But now you're pushing. Now you're pushing when you should say, let me just take a step back because I know they had a long day, and that's where the empathy comes in. So that's when there's a time to be silent. And then she named a few about like when is it time to speak up? I mean, when is it time to speak up? And it's when you know they need you, like need help, like when there's something you can actually provide help for, not just like offering things, but it was like when you actually can provide the help. So like that was something too that they named. And there was a few others, but I thought those 3 were kind of like they hit me. It's like,
You
okay.
petty. I just think you petty, and I don't think you had to go there, and you could have left that out. What's your point?
She
What was
said,
your
"Oh,
purpose?
did you
What
just
you do
call
that
me
for?
my name?"
hmm So
Oh,
I
me.
but I do resonate with like day 26 of like when you think you know why. I think that is something too. Like I try to, well, you should have never did this if it was like this. And it's always like a kind of like a back and forth thing. And it's like, no, they said what it is. And it's like, I have to accept their response. I have to accept that this is where they are right now. This is the reality of where their brain is, and stop trying to push them along or tell them that you shouldn't feel like that right now because X, Y, and Z has happened.
And
So,
that's hard in long-term relationships. Like when
yeah.
you know a person, when you didn't like the pattern, you're like, what are you,
Yeah.
all right. You right.
That's that's rich. I think that, but I agree with it, right? And that's something from my perspective, I agree with that. That's I've realized over the past few years that that is the point where my emotions switch from frustration when I reach that point of understanding, because now I know how we got here. Now I know what the situation was. That makes me feel a little bit better, but it doesn't make me feel better because I'm still mad about the outcome. But that's the point where logically I have to detach from those emotions, switch from how did we get here to, okay, this is exactly how we got here, to now I just don't like the situation. But that's an emotion I can move past, right? So that is a very big separation point. That's interesting that they say
Mhm.
that. Now, listening to someone and knowing when you can help is a man, that's tough because we think we can fix everything. We're fixers, right? So
Mhm.
you're telling me from the very beginning, wait a minute, did we think about this other thing from the beginning? Wait a minute, hold on. We made this decision, but what do we learn from this? And sometimes as ladies, you guys are still processing from the emotional
That
point
may
of,
not be well received.
I'm not there yet, right? But I got an answer for you. I can tell you how we can never find ourselves in this situation again, right? But
Mhm.
that's not the best time for
Mhm.
me to tell you that, even though I've identified a point where I could probably help the situation.
Daniel, you're hitting on the thing Jessica hit on, but like from the reverse side of it, because I think we can all kind of feel that experience of like, why are you trying to fix something? Boy, not you.
You just want me to listen right now.
We're not even there
Listen,
yet.
we're not there, and we may not get there.
And then on
Hey,
that other side, Jessica, you're like, can we just, and like I'm noticing where it goes from like maybe an emotional perspective versus like a more practical, maybe even logical sometimes perspective, and how like we both show up and embody some of these very similar characteristics,
Mhm.
but in different ways that rub each other the wrong
Yeah.
way.
Because if you're looking for validation, you want to be heard and you want me to identify with your emotions and connect with you, right? Because this is an opportunity for us both to be man. This is an opportunity for us both to be on the same team about the
Mhm.
situation. And I'm speaking of maybe a situation outside of the marriage, outside of the home,
Sure.
right? That I'm trying to tell you about something that happened bad at work. And I want you to be right here with me, right? I
Mhm.
want you to be my homie with this one. But now you sitting here and you picking apart what I did wrong and you telling me how this whole thing could have went a different way if I probably would have shut up right 4 hours ago or something. Yeah, that's probably not
Mhm.
the best time. And that's tough. But now to flip it back from a husband perspective, I done sat and listened to the situation where I didn't heard you say that you was wrong, or where I knew I was wrong, but I want to kind of, but I know it's not the right time for me to jump in with the solution to the problem.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So that's the time for me to shut up and
Mm,
zip it.
mm,
Mhm. So, I mean, it sounds twofold. Like at that last piece is recognizing as a partner when you need to be quiet, but also your partner recognizing when they need to be quiet and like where
mm,
you can
Mhm.
lean into the situation with uh perspective, I guess. But I think what came up as you all were talking about the why piece really hit home for me. Like when literally this morning I was like, no, you did this because of this. And he's like, no, I didn't. But you
Mhm.
did. And from again, my therapy brain, I can see it. I know you did it for that reason. But also like you're not there yet. You don't have that perspective. And you may never get there, and that's okay, right? Like it's not my place to like put things on you. So it brought up for me something I say in my practice, which is like expectations are like curse word. Like I don't expectation breeds failure. It breeds loss because you are creating something in somebody that they don't yet know exists, right? And so they can't live up to that. And so when you think you know this why, you have this level of expectation about how they did respond or didn't respond, how you think they're going to respond in the future. And you have then created a whole narrative and story that may have not even happened in the situation that you're thinking about. Like in
Mhm.
the situation this morning, it was that from his perspective, like you're doing something and not including me. And in my perspective, like, no, like I'm here because I'm including you. Like this is all about you. And so, it becomes interesting where you had an expectation for how I would interact with you. I had an expectation as to how you would respond to the information. And that then created a sort of a meltdown, if you will, as opposed to like, yeah, we could have walked into the situation without any um, predetermined narratives in it, right? And to Darnell's point, like being open to like what's going to happen here versus like, here's what I'm thinking is going to happen here.
mm.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good point. I do that a lot. When you already kind of think you know what somebody's gonna say, or you know how it's gonna go, and then they say something totally different, and you're like, "What? Like that? That's not the response I was looking for."
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And y'all having the degree makes it worse because when the way I feel like I know what I know, you really got to go ahead and take the
Mhm.
little hat off because you what is it since you got your degree and everything like go
Mhm.
go ahead and take that off
Like
real
you and your
quick.
little degree need to go on.
What does
Mhm.
healthy detachment look like? Because I think that's also what I'm hearing in this. Like you're feeling what you're feeling or whatever, and you're also waiting. You're providing space for the other person,
Hmm.
and that's detachment. But what does it look like
Yeah.
in a healthy way? Because I think a lot of us know how to detach and be cut off. Like we know how to sever. We know how to
Hmm.
cool, nothing else. And so what does it look like to be able to provide enough detachment for you to be able to take a step back from the
Yes.
overwhelm that's coming up in your body, but then to be able to return back to it when it is time to come back to it?
Hmm.
Mhm. Mhm.
Hmm. I mean, I
For
wonder what
me,
folks are out there thinking. Go ahead.
nah, for me, right? Because as a guy, right, we only have certain emotions, right? Have a lot of ladies have a lot of a wide spectrum of emotions. Guys are either happy, say it, right, or we okay, we cool, we cool.
Hmm.
So for me, that healthy detachment means taking the time to step back, recognizing one where I am emotionally, right, where my ego kind of fits into things, where my emotions kind of fit into things, and then taking that out of the situation so I can look at it from a logical perspective, right? Because once I can pull away how I feel about it, I can look at it for what it actually is. And then we can come back with it and have a conversation. Now that doesn't always work, right? Because it's hard to detach yourself emotionally from things because there may be additional triggers that come up during the course of that conversation that sparks emotions that I probably didn't even realize was associated with the situation.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes it may look like, all right, I know we said we could probably talk through this conversation today, but maybe we learned some new information that we need to digest and step away and come back and do it again. And that's something also that I do at work, right? Hey, I wanted to learn about the situation. All right, you've given me enough to rethink my prior position on it. Let's come back and discuss this again in a couple of days. Um, Again, because professionally is a big area where men have to zip it, right? I know we
Mm-hmm.
probably don't identify, and I keep saying that, but that's probably the biggest challenge within a relationship. It's almost natural because I don't want to um,
Mm.
create a hostile environment for my family and for my wife, right? I try not to. So it's a lot more easier for me. It's easy for me to zip it at home. At work, I have to zip it a little bit more, or put a little bit more effort into zipping it. So it's pulling out that ego and that emotional so I can look at it from a
Mm-hmm.
logical perspective. And what do you guys think? I'm interested to hear. I got three ladies on the line now. Where does logic come into how you guys approach situations? And even with the detachment, do you guys try to pull out the emotional aspect so we can come back and have a unheated conversation? Or do you feel like that embraces the embodiment of the situation? How you feel is how you feel.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I go through stages. Um, I feel like I start off in the high, well, like, or some at some point it gets to like high emotions, and it's kind of like the logic kind of goes out the window, and sometimes that span can be very short. But typically, I'll come back to logic. And sometimes that is the same day, within the same hour of the conversation. Sometimes it might take me like a day, and then once emotions are a little more calm, we can come back and say, this is what I was trying to say, or I might have to text it out. Like, so it just really is depends on different things. But I think definitely for me it is a like it's stages to it. It is. But the logic is always, I'm always trying to find the logic. I am, but sometimes it's hard to do that.
For me, I think the logic, and this, if we go back to childhood again, I by nature am like a highly sensitive person, but that got snuffed in a certain, like a lot of ways growing up. And so I think, especially in relationships, I actually lead with the logic first in the beginning
Mm-hmm.
because I am,
Mm-hmm.
it comes out with me muting myself. And so, like, logic is a really good way for me to mute when I'm feeling or when I'm
Mm-hmm.
experiencing or what might be coming up. And so, logic leads. But there's only a certain point where logic is then like, girl, this don't make sense at all. And so that's when emotions start to come in and just like, what is happening here? This, like, enough is enough. No, we're going to, because I've given so many affordances and like benefits of the doubt that at that
Mm-hmm.
point, my feelings have like, what happens when feelings go
Mm-hmm.
unaddressed, right? It rises, and now here we are. So
Mm-hmm.
then there's no space for the logic if we get to that point, because I am no longer giving you the benefit of my logic. Because, again, logic has been this thing that has muted feelings. And so it's like, well, no, you don't get that anymore. And that's been an area where I've had to, like, okay, Shelly-Ann, all right, what does it look like to get those needs met prior to getting to that point? Because the reality is, especially in a romantic relationship, a long-term one, your ability to be able to see the other person matters to the sustainability of the relationship.
Yeah.
And so how do I create space where I am seen and you are seen?
Yeah. Yeah. I like the
Mm-hmm.
way you put that. And I think for me, when you think about when you're in that pursue space, it is emotion driven. It is not logic driven. It is driven by the fact, and it's not even driven by the actual situation that's happening. It's driven by the fact that you think you're going to lose the other person. You have a feeling of abandonment that's happening, whether it's real or perceived, right? And so they're withdrawing. Their need to take care of themselves is really how I see it, is in your mind, an abandonment of your feeling, your thought, whatever it is, right? And so you are pursuing to try and pull them back in. And so, like, I have seen at a time in my life where I was at that particular space, and that's not logic induced at all. That is literally a space where you're trying to prevent the disconnection from happening. And you're using the situation as sort of bait. I think
Mm-hmm.
now I can lend myself to lead with logic but I'm very, I'm not going to be fluff about when I'm in sort of a matter of fact place. It is or it isn't. There's no ha ha smile about it. It just like, here's the information, here's what we're going with, help me make sense of it. And I have a partner who he doesn't think that quickly. Like he needs time to process what is happening. And so when I'm like, okay, left or right, this or that, like let's just keep it simple and go down the line and check these things off. Like he doesn't process information that way. Um, and so it creates an issue there. So I think and I'm saying logic, but really I think when with my logic, I probably could use a little bit more tact because it becomes very direct and very short and very like concise and neatly packaged, and there's not a lot of room for wiggle. Um, and so I wouldn't say that there's not emotion there. I would say there probably is, probably more of a numb space, but like there is something happening within that space. For me, I think what I'm looking for as I grow is that nice marriage of like, how can I have my emotional self present, be open and aware of your emotional self, and like, how can we learn to like navigate that almost like a nice dance, right? Like, how can we coordinate that to where both things get to be present? And like I say all the time, your feelings are not facts. They're there, they're valid, they're real, but they're not facts. And so we're not making decisions all built around like how you feel about a situation. And so we need to bring in what is right and what is wrong. And so I think it's about like where you lean in, where you don't, like how you let the information lead and how much of it you apply to the situation.
Mm-hmm.
You're making me think of something like efficiency, because I go like after the emotions, there's a detachment, right? And so we talk, okay, benefit of the doubt. We talked, okay, emotions. There's something that comes after that, and that's the cutoff. Like, and for me, that's when my really short, really direct, really to the point, really efficient, like, let's just get this
Hmm.
done to get this done. Because
Hmm.
for me, what that has looked like is there is no safety for my emotions here, or there's no point for my emotions here. And so what that has then led to is, again, a detachment that I wouldn't always say is a healthy detachment, because it's more about like efficiency and getting it done, which is easy for me to lean into, which is, okay, well, what needs to happen, da 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 da, X, Y, and Z. And I do think sometimes like having a space to be able to feel it out, does this even feel good for us? I do think there's space for that is needed, that when we lean too much into that other space gets missed.
But Doc, you just said something, and I
Uh-huh.
don't even know
She
that you know
did.
you just said
Mm-hmm.
something,
She
right? Like
did.
you just said a whole word. I'm gonna throw a little salt on that real quick, like a little flame on that fire, and I'm gonna just put it in a sentence. You're not safe enough for me to be soft.
Mm.
Yep.
I'm gonna leave that.
Mm.
She says a lot of stuff in that. That was a whole loaded thing you said. You said you get to a point where does it even matter? That's the whole point where men are functioning out of to begin with.
Mm.
You got to think we're taught, and it's interesting. For when I asked that question, and all three of you went around the room, and you said it all sounded almost that you lead with emotion. You lead with logic, but you also lead with emotion. And emotion is just as important as the logic because that's how I feel with it. And I'm not even sure if now I don't know, I might get beat up for this one, but within the male marriage, and I'm talking about my partners, right? Because I talk to a lot of married men. I'm in a lot of married men chat groups, meeting groups. We get together monthly, we get together weekly. We have times that we sit and we discuss things and just as a support system. But the main theory is don't talk to your wife about your emotions. Your wife is not your therapist. Hold it in. She doesn't need to know how you feel.
Mm.
And I'm like, wow, you telling me that ladies got to get to a certain point where y'all even feel that same kind of way. So we're automatically operating from two different spaces to where we're holding back emotions and we're trying to process through logic most of the time. And you guys are, no, the emotion is just as important. So there's communication detachment right there, just on a basic broad men versus women level. Right.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was really interesting to me.
Hmm.
You're bringing up something that's actually really interesting, and I'll kind of like sum it up really quickly, like that different places where we're coming in at. Because I remember moments during my pregnancy with the twins, and there were things that were happening and emotions that were present. And I'd look over and it'd be like, I'm cool. I'm like, well, I'm not cool, right? Good to go. And so feeling alone in some
Yeah.
of the fears that I had, feeling alone in some of the worries and the anxieties that I had. And when trying to present those things, it was, things will be okay. And like that wasn't received well by me in the moment because it was this operating off of a belief that I didn't have. It invalidated what was
Mm-hmm.
happening in that moment. But what I'm hearing from you is like, well, no, like there's a whatever
Yeah.
might be happening, because I'm sure, right? It's your kids too. So whatever might be happening, it's not accessible, maybe in that
It's
same
not
way.
accessible on a surface level or
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
immediately, right? Like I say, we have to sit and think about it. Same thing. I remember we went to a doctor's when my wife was pregnant, right? And they gave us the book of, how the baby develops within the womb, right? Um, it was maybe 3 months before I sat down and really looked at that and was like, whoa, at this point right now. Where she looked at it maybe 2 or 3 times after leaving a doctor's appointment and probably had those pages memorized in her mind.
mhm,
Right. So in her mind, as weeks go on, she's identifying with this thought in her mind that reflects back to this image from the book that she read. And at this point, she's probably sitting here rubbing her stomach and, oh, my baby right around this time. And I'm walking around thinking about a slice of pizza,
Mm-hmm.
you
mhm,
know? But
mhm.
it did get me. It just took a while, and I had to be in the right space to be able to connect with those emotions and those feelings.
Yeah.
And I think we're just really the conversation here, as it applies to the zip it concept, is men or women are unzipping those zippers at different times.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
I mean, I think about like if you go to Disney or Cedar Point or any of these places, you get a fast pass and you can stand in a regular line
Yeah.
and or you can not get in line at all. And I think what I'm really hearing is that for a lot of us, based on how we were normed growing up, we were given sort of like this fast access pass to our emotional selves, some faster than others. And whereas you're saying like a lot of men have been in the position to either not be put in the line for emotions at all, that they were completely castrated, or in a space where like you have access to it, but it's the minimal amount if you understand them and can process them and can access them at all. And so how that's being taken in relationships is you don't care, you're not present, you don't see me,
Mm-hmm.
you don't value me. When in reality, it's I don't have the skills or the tools to do that. And if I do have them, it just takes me a minute to get to them.
Bingo.
Mm-hmm.
Fast pass
Mm,
for emotion versus a fast pass for logic. And even go back to the kids, right? Just picture any kids, a little boy and a little girl. Little girl's crying. Oh, sweetheart, what's wrong? What's this? Boy, what you crying for? Zip
mm,
it. And what
Yeah.
does crying even do, right? That's telling the guys, hey, it's not even okay to process the most basic emotion of being sad, of being frustrated, of not being scared, of being not know what to do. Tighten up.
yeah.
Tighten up.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, right. Two fast pass, two different lanes, but
Mm.
these are two different, very different rides that we have fast
Yeah.
passes to.
That socialization piece, like it's really like it's
Yeah.
prominent
It's
in the
heavy.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, think about how often or how long it takes for us to reverse not just a really deep rooted construct, but something that really takes for us just to flip DBT, right? Just those types of therapeutic skills to help us change the way that we do things or change certain behaviors. We're talking about a foundational understanding of how the world works, right? Going all the
Hmm.
way back when we first learned boys versus girls, or this is that. Boys don't cry, girls do, right?
Yep.
Boys are
Hmm.
not overly emotional, girls can be. Guys have to
Hmm.
be logical. We have to do, not think, not feel.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think you summed
Hmm.
it up great. That was a great
And both
analogy
of
with
us
the
get
fast
put in
pass.
boxes as a result of this, right? So you are too
Yes.
emotional, you are not emotional enough. And it's like, well, hold on.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
All right, because what
Well,
do you
and
do when we
then
see a lady that doesn't connect with her emotions? She's very logical, very strict,
she's
very
being a
firm, very
man. She's trying to, yes, yes,
right.
she's trying to be the man. She's emasculating. She's all of these things.
Mm.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Mm-hmm.
got these constructs that unhealthy, unsafe boxes that have put us in that we learn to operate within. And then when someone doesn't fit that mold, right? So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah, we unzipping a lot of boxes today, huh?
Yeah.
I know. Listen, and my cup is empty. So that means we are coming close to the end of our time. I want each of you to take a second and just kind of process the conversation we've been able to have today. And what I'd like you to share with our audience, a couple of insights. And so ideally, what what are you emptying out of your cup, and what did you fill your cup with in the conversation that we were able to have, right? And like what is the thing that you're leaving the people with? Take a second and think about
I think for me, and I don't even think I told y'all what was in my cup. So I had lavender calamine tea in my cup this morning. It was so good. Um, but it is gone. And I think what I got from today is just honestly for me personally, I just need to have more empathy. I just need to have more empathy with some people that I have direct relationships with, because that understanding the piece of that we're unzipping at different times. We are processing at different times, and everybody's not on my time and
it.
shouldn't just get it. Or based off the history, based off of all of these things, you should just know. Like, and it's like everybody's processing different. So for me, I think stepping into people that I have to communicate with, and I mean, I've talked about this before, specifically my daughter's dad. We are not together anymore, but we still have to deal with each other because we're co-parenting, and extending some grace to him because it is. I'm sure he'd be like, "What is wrong with you?" But I'm learning to zip it more and just letting things happen naturally. Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, similarly, I think I got perspective from this conversation.
Yeah.
And I know like we were all like in and doing, but sometimes even saying it out loud, you're like, oh, do you do what you're saying?
Hmm.
So perspective is always good. And I think what I'm kind of taking away is like learning for myself, what does it look like to hold that empathy and understanding without abandonment of self. And I think it's kind of like walked the line for me for a lot of years. And I'm in a way that I'm like, yeah, no, I don't self abandon anymore. What does it also look like to not release understanding and empathy for people who are in different spaces, especially people who have like direct relationship with me and I am heavily impacted by, right? That's why
Hmm.
strangers are a little easier sometimes because your processing, your work is directly impacting us or me or like whatever dynamic we create together. And so learning to figure that out a little more.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Miss Deja, you reminded me of something. What's in my cup is juice of the apple.
Okay.
Just a straight up apple juice.
Mhm.
Uh, I really enjoy being here. So thank you for having me as a guest on your show today. I truly appreciate that and this opportunity to come together and to learn from you ladies too. Wonderful ladies. I
Mhm.
appreciate that. And what I think I'm gonna take away from this is a stronger sense of communicating to foster the best outcome.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is knowing when to apply that pressure, because you spoke about that a lot, Dr. Shelley, right? Knowing when to apply that pressure, knowing when not to apply that pressure. And I think that goes into a discernment of knowing what needs to be said at certain moments and when certain things not. Um, and understanding, I really like how you guys associated how emotion is attached to the conversations and how that kind of can change the direction of things. So just in Deja, you said speaking with empathy, right? That's a really big part. Not always trying to fix things because as a man, the main thing is how do we fix it and get this train back on the tracks, right? Sometimes we just have to sit on the side of the tracks and understand, hey, this thing is not moving right now, and that's okay. We can pick up that speed and regain that momentum a little bit later.
Mm.
So that empathy piece was really important to me.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. You know, um, I really hear this space of both parties are really just looking to be held, whether that's metaphorically or literally. Um, that on either end, you or your partner, you're looking to be sort of held and engulfed by the other person, seen by the other person, valued for how you show up in the moment, and allowed to show up in the moment any way you need to show up. Now we got to be respectful of freedom from and freedom to, right? Like you get to do things, but I also get to take care of myself and what that looks like, that like lack of self-abandonment that Dr. Shirley took away. But because we're in our own relationships and we become so myopic, part of what I take away from is literally what I say to couples every single week. Be curious. When you think you know the why, be curious. And step back, right? Because you're probably not right. I'm always right, but you're probably not right. And so, but you seriously, be curious. because what you think their why is generally not going to be that why. And even if it is, it doesn't matter. Be curious enough to be open. And I think that will lend itself to bringing them in towards you and bringing you in towards them if that is the goal. So,
Just
um,
not ask a question, and if it's
go
too
for it.
much, say, "Girl, no." I'm still working on it because
Mm-mm.
I know you kind of brought in the thing from earlier, and so now
Yeah.
that we've like had this whole conversation, I'm curious. Maybe even the people are curious. What does repair look like? Because right, we get into these things, it will happen. Like, what does it look like
Hmm.
now?
That's an interesting question. How I kind of thought about this as I literally was thinking about this as we were like walking through this conversation. I think repair looks like accountability here. And so I think it looks like um, acknowledging what happened in the space. And that's just for a fact, like this is what happened in the space. I think is accepting my role and the part that I played in the scenario without needing to see that through the lens of somebody else, right? Like this is
Mm,
how you showed up and this is what you created in the scenario with respect to how he experienced it. And also acknowledging like why I sought to respond in that way. So acknowledge acceptance, accountability, and then like focusing on atonement and attunement. And so like how can we get to a place where we are not focused on the situation itself, but the mechanisms that control the situation. And so this need to be heard and this need to be valued. And so how do we talk to each other about better ways to meet the needs of the person in the future and better ways to like say that that's the need. One of the things that came up in the conversation with him was that I felt left out. And it was like, oh, but if we would have started with, hey, this is what I'm feeling, we would have like ignored all of that. And so it's in a space of, well, there was a reason he couldn't access that at the moment. And so you can't tell him like what he should have done or how he could have done it. So acceptance, acknowledgement, accountability, attunement, and atonement, and coming back with just positive regard, assuming that your partner means, and this is in non-harmful situations, but assuming that your partner means the best when they're trying to address you or ask you a question and approaching it with that level of curiosity. So, he left to go take one of the kids to an activity. And so hopefully when we get to come back together, I can sit down and say like, hey, I'm noticing that you said you had this need and I didn't respond to it. And so I'm wondering what repair would look like for you and what your needs are
mm.
in this moment. And so giving him the space, right? So that's where I'm at.
Okay, okay,
That's a good
I like
space.
that. I like that.
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
And hold him
I,
accountable. Make sure he answers that question also.
Yeah.
mhm. And I am, right? That I think is the hardest, the biggest part, because a lot of times Rollo will be like, oh, I don't know, or I need a minute. But to Shelly's point, like that, I need a minute, like like
Yeah.
you were saying, Oscar's like, okay, that's we ain't coming back to it. And so, like, how do we sit with like, let's just sit in this space for a minute
Yeah.
and let's see what that looks like, or take some time. Can you be intentional about thinking about it and bring it back to
And bring it back. Yeah.
us?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ooh, the
yeah.
people. Yes. Y'all just got some gems
Yeah.
right there. Shoot.
Listen, I got therapy. I didn't have to pay $350 an hour for.
Okay.
Well, very good, very good. We are so excited to always have this conversation with each other. This is an opportunity for us to like we told you before, not just use our professional brains, but really talk to you about our lived experience and hope that you can gauge some perspective from our lived experience. These are just, four particular points of view in this conversation. And we're not saying we're right or we're wrong. We're just offering you a way of thinking that might be helpful as you go along and navigate relationships. So I think the biggest part is we didn't say, shut up and sit down. We really said it's an opportunity to consider why you want to speak and what the purpose and how that engagement is going to shift or change the relationship, and kind of figure out what's the driving force at pushing you to want to like stay silent or to speak. So I think that is all that we have. The folks have
Yes.
spoken, and so we are saying good night and goodbye, and we will see y'all next month.
Hmm.
Peace and love.